Hey everyone, you know how we're always talking about making maintenance smoother, especially with all the labor stuff going on in food and beverage manufacturing?
Yeah.
But today we're diving into this ebook. It's called 7 Ways a Planning and Scheduling Solution Eases Maintenance Management. And it's got some pretty interesting stats and strategies, not just the usual theory.
It's funny you mention this now because the labor shortage is a huge deal.
Oh yeah.
The Food Marketing Institute's 2023 report even called it the top challenge for food and beverage manufacturers.
Yeah, I saw that. Something like 73% of companies can't find qualified people.
It's crazy, right? And these aren't exactly entry-level jobs either.
Definitely not.
The average salary is over $77,000.
Oh.
But even with good pay, they can't fill the roles, so the people they do have are even more important.
For sure. So this ebook mentions a virtual workforce boost, and I'm
Oh,
curious,
yeah.
is it really possible to get a 35% boost just from planning and scheduling better without even hiring more people?
That's exactly what Eric Hupchey proposes. He's the one who created the Road to Reliability framework.
Okay.
And there's actually data backing it up.
Hmm.
Companies using these solutions see those gains, sometimes even more, just by maximizing what their existing team can do.
Hmm. That's a big claim.
Yeah.
I'd love to learn more about how that framework works, but
Yeah.
for now, let's stick with those 7 key impacts the ebook highlights. The first one is about minimizing those annoying breakdown repairs.
Breakdowns. We all know they're going to happen, but the goal is to spend less than 15% of your maintenance time on them.
Yeah.
If you're closer to 30% constantly reacting to stuff, that's a problem.
That's a good benchmark. So where does planning and scheduling come in? It's not a magic fix, is it?
No, not magic, but it helps you shift from being reactive to being proactive. By making your technicians more efficient, you can free up more time for preventative maintenance. Like, imagine a technician who used to spend half their day just looking for parts and tools. With a good system, they've got what they need, the work order's clear, and they can just get to fixing the problem.
Okay.
That consistent preventative work then means fewer breakdowns.
So it's about streamlining workflows so there's more time for preventative maintenance. It makes sense. Fewer breakdowns, less downtime, everybody wins.
Exactly, and that ties into the next impact, boosting your first-time fix rate.
So you fix it right the first time, no repeat visits.
Ideally, yeah. But we both know things don't always go that smoothly.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
What are some of those roadblocks to getting that first-time fix? I bet missing parts cause a lot of delays.
Yeah, missing parts are a big one. Imagine waiting days for a part to arrive. That's a lot of lost production time.
Ugh, yeah.
Another common issue is rushing the repair. Technicians under pressure might make mistakes or skip steps, and that just leads to incomplete fixes and more downtime.
It seems like communication between maintenance and production could be a factor too.
Yeah.
Like what happens when maintenance needs to work on a machine while production is running?
You hit it right on the head. Poor coordination leads to delays or those rushed repairs, which makes everything less effective. A planning and scheduling solution with good communication features can help prevent those conflicts. It lets you see the production schedule, identify downtime windows, and coordinate the maintenance proactively.
So it's like having a command center to make sure everybody's on the same page. Fewer surprises, smoother operations.
I like that analogy. It really helps build that culture of reliability. And speaking of which, that's our next impact.
So we're moving beyond just fixing things. We're talking about a mindset where everybody's invested in keeping things running smoothly. That sounds like a pretty big cultural shift.
It is. It means putting emphasis on those first-time fixes, really tracking the root causes of breakdowns so you can be more preventative, and even making cleaning and sanitization part of the routine.
Cleaning and sanitization. I wouldn't have thought of that as part of reliability.
It's crucial, especially in food and beverage. Residue can cause corrosion, bacteria, and even mechanical issues. Adding cleaning to those checklists helps prevent those problems from even starting.
Interesting. It's almost like treating your equipment like your own kitchen. Keep everything clean and in its place.
Exactly. Proactive care and attention.
Okay, so we've got minimizing breakdowns, increasing first-time fix rates, and building this reliability culture. What's next on the list?
Let's talk schedule compliance. You want to aim for 85% to 95% of your scheduled maintenance actually being completed each week.
Wow, that's a pretty high target. What happens if a company keeps missing that mark? How does that affect the team?
It's like a domino effect. Keep missing those scheduled tasks, and managers lose trust in the schedule, workers lose trust in the schedule, and that whole culture of reliability starts to fall apart.
Yeah, it's like a broken promise.
Yeah.
If the schedule isn't reliable, people just stop paying attention to it.
Hmm.
So how do you prevent that from happening? Is that where technology comes in?
Exactly. A modern planning and scheduling solution can track how much of that scheduled maintenance is actually getting done. It becomes a key performance indicator, a KPI. By watching that KPI, you can see bottlenecks and fix problems quickly, which keeps people on schedule.
There's that saying, what gets measured gets managed. And
Exactly.
it reminds me of something you said earlier, maximizing wrench time. I think every maintenance team knows the frustration of wasted time, whether it's hunting for parts or waiting to access equipment.
Oh, absolutely. And that non-productive time translates to lost revenue, especially when you factor in overtime. Think about California's new law, 1.5 times pay for overtime.
Ouch, that adds up fast. With an average hourly rate of almost $39, that means every overtime hour costs over $58. So you've got lost productivity and inflated labor costs, a double whammy.
Exactly.
So how does planning and scheduling tackle this?
It optimizes technician routes and makes sure they have what they need before they even start the job. So instead of spending an hour driving between sites, they have a streamlined route and the parts are ready for them. That time saved means more wrench time, more repairs done, more value for the company.
So it's about working smarter, not harder,
Yeah.
which leads us to our next impact, incentivizing the right behaviors.
Hmm.
What exactly are those right behaviors?
Mm.
Is it just about rewarding people who work the most overtime?
That's a trap a lot of companies fall into. They reward the heroics, but not the consistency.
Hmm.
We need to shift the focus away from reacting to emergencies and toward being proactive. So we need to reward those proactive behaviors.
Okay, so how do you actually tie rewards to those outcomes? What kind of KPIs could you use to encourage that proactive maintenance?
Well, you could use things like first-time completion rate, planned maintenance percentage, or even the time between repairs for the same machine. Those encourage people to work together and take responsibility for the equipment. It's not about one hero fixing everything. It's about preventing those problems as a team.
That's a nice shift in perspective. It takes the focus off the individual and puts it on the team. And I bet technology can help track those KPIs and make the whole reward process smoother.
For sure. Automated solutions like planning and scheduling get rid of all that manual data entry, which makes it much easier to track performance, see where you stand, and set goals for improvement.
It's like a virtual assistant for your maintenance team, keeping tabs on everything and giving you insights.
Exactly. That frees up managers to focus on strategy and lets technicians be more efficient and proactive.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Minimizing breakdowns, maximizing wrench time, building a reliability culture, and even incentivizing the right behaviors. What's
Yeah.
the last piece of the puzzle when it comes to making maintenance easier?
It all comes down to continuous improvement through documentation.
Documentation. I can see how that might get pushed aside when everyone's busy. Why is it so important?
It's about capturing those valuable lessons learned. Think of it as building a knowledge base for your team so you can analyze what happened in the past and keep getting better. It's easy to forget the details of a repair once it's done, but if you document those details, you can prevent the same problems from popping up again.
So what exactly should you be documenting? Is it just about recording what you did and when you did it?
It's more than a checklist. You want to capture what resources you used, the time it took, any ways to optimize things, why jobs weren't completed on the first try, what caused breakdowns, and anything unusual about specific machines or job types.
So you're building a big data set that you can then use to find trends, see recurring issues, and look for ways to improve.
Precisely. And with a good planning and scheduling solution, a lot of that data gets captured automatically, which makes it easy to analyze and plan for the future.
It's like turning data into insights, and then turning those insights into action. We've covered a lot of ground here, from the challenges facing the food and beverage industry to this idea of a virtual workforce boost, and those 7 key impacts that can really transform how you handle maintenance.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
It feels like we've just scratched the surface,
You're sure.
but I'm eager to hear about how companies are putting these ideas into practice.
Oh, yeah, the case studies are always interesting.
So join us for part 2 of this deep dive, where we'll look at some real-world examples and get even more practical about implementing a planning and scheduling solution.
See you there.
Welcome back. Last time we really dug into those 7 key impacts of planning and scheduling and how they can change the game for maintenance management.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
I'm really curious to hear about some companies who are actually using these ideas, seeing it in action.
Case studies are always helpful. Let's start with this food and beverage manufacturer. They were having a lot of downtime, and their maintenance practices were all over the place.
Oh, I bet that was costing them a lot of money and creating a kind of frustration.
Exactly. It was a constant cycle of reacting to problems. So they decided to try a planning and scheduling solution to get things under control.
Hmm.
And they started by really analyzing their processes, figuring out where the pain points were, and setting some clear goals.
That makes sense. You have to know where you're starting before you can improve.
Hmm.
Did they run into any snags during that assessment phase?
You know what? Their biggest challenge was getting everybody on board with the change.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
The technicians were used to doing things their way, and the managers were worried about the cost. They realized that communication was going to be key.
So instead of just forcing a new system on everyone,
Mm,
they focused on bringing people along.
right.
How did they do that?
Well, they held workshops to explain why a more proactive approach would benefit everyone. They emphasized how it could make everybody's jobs easier. They even brought in a consultant who had experience implementing these solutions in other food and beverage companies.
Oh, that's smart, bringing in an outside expert to
Yeah.
make it more credible and address those concerns.
Yeah, and it definitely helped smooth things over.
That's good.
Once people understood the why, they were much more open to it.
Right.
And the company also made sure to provide thorough training so that everyone felt comfortable using the new system.
Training is so important, but it often gets overlooked.
Yes.
Did they offer ongoing support as well?
They did. They set up a dedicated help desk and even paired up experienced technicians with those who were less familiar with the technology. It fostered a real sense of teamwork and made the transition a lot easier.
I like that approach.
Yeah, it worked well.
Okay, so they really put effort into the people
Yeah.
side of things.
Hmm.
What about choosing the software? How did they decide what to go with?
After looking at a few different options, they chose a cloud-based solution that integrated with their existing asset management system. It streamlined data entry, made tracking KPIs easier, and allowed them to generate some really useful reports.
Was there a specific reason they went with a cloud-based solution?
Well, they looked at on-premise options too,
Okay.
but the cloud-based one had a few advantages. Lower upfront costs, automatic updates, and you could access it from anywhere with an internet connection.
I can see how that would be appealing.
Yeah, it just fit their needs and their budget better.
So what happened after they implemented it? Did they actually see those improvements, like that virtual workforce boost we talked about?
The results were pretty impressive. Their downtime went down significantly. They got better at sticking to their maintenance schedule. Their wrench time increased.
Wow.
And they even saw a boost in morale among the maintenance team.
That's amazing. It really shows the impact of proactive maintenance.
Yeah.
And I bet those benefits extended to other parts of the business too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Production went up, costs went down, and their customers were happier. It was a win all around.
That's a fantastic example of how planning and scheduling can really work. Now, I'm curious to see how it plays out in a completely different setting. Let's switch gears and talk about a pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
They've got those strict regulatory requirements for equipment maintenance.
Yeah, that adds a whole other level of complexity. Documentation and traceability are super important for product quality and patient safety.
There's no room for error in that industry.
Right, they can't just wing it.
Yeah.
So they implemented a solution that integrated really well with their existing quality management system. That way they could link maintenance activities to specific batches of medication. It created a complete audit trail.
Well, that's smart. So if there's ever a problem with a batch, they can easily trace it back to the maintenance that was performed.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just basic record keeping. The system actually helped them analyze data to find patterns and potential risks.
Okay.
For example, they found a connection between certain types of equipment failures and the environmental conditions in their facility.
Hmm.
So it's not just about following the rules, it's about using data to get better and prevent problems.
Yeah, that's taking it to the next level.
And they didn't stop there. They started integrating sensor data from their equipment to do predictive maintenance.
Wow, so they're anticipating failures before they even happen.
Exactly. It shows how planning and scheduling can be a starting point for even more advanced strategies.
It's all about staying ahead of the curve. Let's look at another example. This time, it's a manufacturing company that was worried about their energy costs and their environmental impact.
Yeah, sustainability is a big concern these days. It's great to see how planning and scheduling can be used to make a positive impact.
They realized that their maintenance practices were actually contributing to their energy use and waste generation.
Right, it makes sense when you think about it. Poorly maintained equipment uses more energy and breaks down more often.
Exactly. So they started using a planning and scheduling solution that had features for energy monitoring and optimization. That allowed them to track their energy usage, find areas where they could improve, and implement some strategies to reduce their consumption.
So what were some of those strategies? Did they upgrade their equipment or change their operating procedures?
They did both. The system showed them which equipment was using more energy than it should,
Okay.
so they invested in newer, more efficient models.
That makes sense.
They also used the data to adjust their production schedules, running those energy-intensive processes during off-peak hours when electricity was cheaper.
So they were making smarter decisions to optimize their energy use and save money at the same time.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about energy. They used the system to improve their waste management, too.
Okay.
They tracked how much waste each maintenance activity generated and looked for ways to reduce and recycle more.
That's a great example of a holistic approach to sustainability.
Yeah, it's about looking at the big picture and finding ways to be more responsible at every stage.
I agree. It shows how planning and scheduling can do so much more than just improve efficiency. It can really drive positive change across the entire organization.
These case studies are really inspiring. They show just how versatile planning and scheduling can be. But I imagine it's not always easy to implement these solutions. What are some of the things that can trip companies up?
One common mistake is underestimating how important data quality is. If the data you're putting into the system is inaccurate or incomplete, the results you get won't be reliable.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Garbage in, garbage out. So how do you make sure the data is good?
You need to set clear standards for data entry and train people on those standards.
Okay.
It's also important to have a process for double-checking the data and fixing any errors quickly.
So it's about having checks and balances to make sure the data is trustworthy.
Right.
What else can cause problems?
Another common pitfall is forgetting about the human element. Implementing a new system can shake things up and create resistance.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. You need to get everyone on board and make them feel included in the process. What are some other common mistakes?
Sometimes companies try to do too much too fast.
Oh, yeah.
They try to use every single feature of the software right away.
Okay.
And that can overwhelm everyone and make things unnecessarily complicated.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. You're just going to get drenched and overwhelmed. What's a better approach?
Start small. Pick one or two key features to implement first, and then gradually add more as you go.
Okay.
It gives everyone time to learn and adjust at their own pace, which makes the transition smoother and more successful.
So it's about taking a gradual approach and building up confidence as you go.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I like that. It's about pacing yourself, enjoying those small wins, and staying focused on the long-term goals.
Absolutely. And it's about understanding that this isn't just a one-time project. It's an ongoing process of continuously getting better.
That's a great point to remember. It's not about reaching a finish line. It's about building a culture where you're always learning and adapting.
Exactly. It's about empowering your team to find ways to improve, try new technologies, and always strive for excellence.
Well said. Okay, so in this second part, we've looked at some real-world case studies that show how powerful planning and scheduling can be across different industries.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of variety.
And we've talked about the importance of data quality, the need to involve everyone, and the benefits of taking a step-by-step approach. But before we move on to the final part, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the link between planning and scheduling and sustainability.
Oh yeah, that's an important connection. Sustainability isn't just a trend anymore, it's a core part of doing business.
Welcome back, everyone. We've spent the last two parts exploring this whole world of planning and scheduling for maintenance.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
We've talked about the potential benefits, the whole idea of building a reliability culture, and even how technology is going to change the future of maintenance.
It's exciting to see how it's all evolving.
But now I want to get practical. In
Yeah.
this final part, I want to focus on how to actually make these solutions work for you. What are the steps? What are the challenges? How can companies set themselves up for success?
That's the million-dollar question. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, but the real work starts when you roll up your sleeves and get down to business.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the nitty-gritty of implementation.
Okay, sounds good.
What are the steps? What are the common roadblocks? And how can companies set themselves up to succeed?
Well, it's a journey,
Okay.
and the first step is knowing where you stand.
Okay.
You need to take a good hard look at your current maintenance processes, find those pain points, and get input from everyone involved.
So you figure out where you are before you can map out where you want to go.
Right.
But I imagine that assessment could be pretty overwhelming. Where do you even start?
Start with the basics. What are your maintenance goals? What are your biggest challenges? What are those challenges costing you? And most importantly, how could planning and scheduling help?
So you're defining the problem before you start looking for solutions.
Exactly.
And I bet that means talking to everyone, from the technicians on the floor to the managers up top.
Absolutely. You want everyone who's going to be affected by this change to be part of the process, get their feedback, hear their concerns, and address them head on.
It's about building buy-in from the start.
Right.
And I imagine that can be tough, especially if people are resistant to change or skeptical of new technology.
It can be. Managing that change is a big part of any implementation. You need to communicate clearly, be open about concerns, and make sure everyone has the training and support they need.
So it's not just about installing software. You're actually changing the culture of the organization.
Exactly. You're creating this shared understanding of why planning and scheduling is good and getting everyone committed to making it work.
Okay, so you've assessed where you are, you've gotten input from everyone, and you've started to build that foundation of support.
hmm
What's the next step in this implementation journey?
Well, the next big decision is choosing the right planning and scheduling solution. And that's not something to rush into.
Okay.
There are a lot of options out there, and they all have their pros and cons.
I imagine the first choice is between a cloud-based solution and an on-premise system.
Yeah, that's a big one.
What are the key things to think about there?
Cloud-based solutions are getting more and more popular for a few reasons.
Okay.
They often cost less upfront, they update automatically, and you can access them from anywhere with an internet connection.
So it's about flexibility, access, and affordability.
Exactly.
But what about on-premise systems? Are there times when those might make more sense?
Yeah, on-premise can be good if you have really strict security requirements or if you want total control over your IP stuff,
Okay.
but usually they have a bigger upfront cost and need more maintenance.
So it's a trade-off between control and convenience, basically.
Right.
What else should companies consider when they're shopping for a solution?
You really got to look at what the software can do. Does it match your needs and how you work? Does it integrate with your other systems like your asset management or your ERP?
So it needs to fit into your existing tech setup.
Exactly.
And what about the vendor themselves? What are the right questions to ask?
You want a vendor with a good track record and someone who really understands your industry. Ask about their experience, their support services, their training. Make sure you understand their pricing and the contract before you sign anything.
It's about doing your homework and finding a partner you can trust.
Okay.
So you've picked a solution, you've signed on the dotted line.
Yep.
What happens next?
Now it's time to actually implement the thing. And this is where things can go sideways if you're not careful.
What are some of the traps people fall into?
One big one is trying to do too much at once.
Oh, I can see that.
It's tempting to want all the bells and whistles right away, but that can overwhelm your team and lead to pushback and frustration.
So you need to take it step by step, starting with the core functions and gradually adding more.
Exactly. Nail the basics first. Once everyone's comfortable with the system and how things work, then you can start adding those more advanced features.
It's like building a house. Foundation first,
Mhm.
then the walls, the roof, and all the finishing touches.
Perfect analogy. And just like with the house, you need a good plan, skilled workers, and attention to detail to get it right.
So we've got the phased approach. What other advice do you have for a smooth implementation?
Communication is huge. Keep everyone in the loop throughout the process, from the very beginning to the final rollout.
Okay.
Give regular updates, answer questions quickly, and address concerns openly and honestly.
It's about being transparent and working together. And I imagine that means providing enough training and support.
Absolutely. Make sure everyone who's going to be using the system knows how to use it. That includes the technical side of the software and the new ways of working, and offer ongoing support so people can get help when they need it.
So people need to be comfortable using the system and confident that they can do their jobs well.
Right.
What about moving all the data over?
Yeah.
That could be a messy and time-consuming process, can't it?
It can be. If you're switching from an old system, you have to be really careful. Clean up your data before you move it, make sure the fields match up correctly, and test everything thoroughly to make sure it's working right.
So you might need to slow down the process to make sure it's done right.
Yeah, it's better to take your time and get it right the first time than to rush it and end up with a system full of mistakes.
Okay, so we've talked about implementation, the things to watch out for, and what it takes to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
But what about after the system's up and running? What about ongoing maintenance and support?
That's important to remember. Implementing a solution isn't a one-and-done thing. It's an ongoing process of making things better. You need to keep an eye on the system, track those KPIs, find areas where you can optimize, and adjust as you go.
So it's all about that culture of continuous improvement we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And it's about keeping up with new technologies and best practices. Planning and scheduling is constantly changing, so you need to stay informed and adapt.
It's like anything else in your business. You need to invest in keeping things running smoothly to make sure your systems are working at their best and giving you the results you want.
That's a great way to put it. And it's an investment that will pay off in the long run.
So in this final part, we've gotten into the details of implementing a planning and scheduling solution, from the initial assessment to keeping things running smoothly over time. We've talked about the challenges, the keys to success, and the need to keep getting better. But most importantly, I hope we've shown you how powerful planning and scheduling can be for maintenance. It's not just about doing things better, it's about doing things in a completely new way, a way that's more efficient, more reliable, more sustainable, and ultimately more profitable.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been great exploring all these different aspects with you.
I've enjoyed it too, and I hope everyone listening has gotten something out of it. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a challenge. Take what you've learned here and put it into practice in your own companies. Start making those changes that will transform your maintenance operations and take your businesses to the next level.
And remember, there's help out there.
That's right. Until next time, keep those wrenches turning.